in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. The imperial decree for the marriage of Prince Edward and his side consort had just been issued, and the entire capital was waiting to see me become a laughingstock. I was Prince Edward's official princess consort, personally betrothed by Emperor Henry, merely awaiting the auspicious day to enter the prince's manor with glory and splendor. However, Edward personally beseeched the emperor, wishing to take Camilla Lynn, the personal maid of his mother, noble consort Margaret Lynn, as his side consort. Not only did he want her to enter the manor on the same day and share the same wedding ceremony, but he also petitioned for her to have the right to manage the household. Doting upon his son, Emperor Henry agreed to his demands. He even allowed noble consort Margaret to adopt the maid as her niece. Everyone said that before I had even entered the manor, I had already lost the prince's favor, becoming less significant than a mere maid, truly pitiable. Yet, I did not care in the slightest. I come from the Duke of Gu's estate, a family with 100 years of renown. My father, Duke Arthur Gu, holds real power, and my brother, General William Gu, fights in the borderlands, having established great merit many times. So what if we enter the manor on the same day? I am the princess consort, and she is but a side consort. The imperial command cannot be disobeyed, that is true, but once inside the manor, would I really let her climb over my head? I returned to the main hall to pay respects to my parents. When the doors closed, my mother, Duchess Elizabeth, looked unwell. She spoke straightforwardly, saying that Emperor Henry's actions were clearly meant to humiliate the Gu family. She worried that I would have neither my husband's favor nor the right to manage the household, making my days in the prince's manor difficult. My father also said that if I did not wish to marry, he would go to the palace and beg the emperor to retract the decree. I understood my parents' love for me, but I still shook my head to stop my father. The imperial decree has been issued, the emperor's words could not be taken back. Emperor Henry favors Edward and intends to elevate him, but the Gu family has been prominent for many years. Perhaps the emperor intends to warn us. If father went to beg, it would only make his majesty more suspicious. Since childhood, I have been cherished and spoiled, loved by my parents and doted on by my brother, but I cannot be so selfish. I immediately comforted my mother, saying she is merely a side consort, born as a servant girl. Nothing to fear. Favor is not the most important thing. With the Gu family here, I only need to fulfill my duties as the princess consort. I do not fear failing to stand firm in the prince's manor. My mother came from a noble family. She understood this reasoning. She simply pitied me. Who is a mother that does not wish for her daughter to have a perfect marriage? My father's eyes were also full of pity and guilt. They prepared an even more abundant dowry for me. When my brother found out, he added all the treasures he had been rewarded with over the years. Even the betrothal gifts sent by Prince Edward were added to my dowry. I was touched by their love. Stepping out of the main hall, I looked toward the imperial palace, the corners of my lips curving up slightly. It is just Prince Edward. I have long had my own plans. On the wedding day the wild geese flew high. When I married, I brought a full 188 chests of dowry. The first chest had already entered the prince's manor, while the last had not yet left the duke's estate. It was truly a spectacular procession of red dowry stretching for 10 miles. Even though noble consort Margaret added to Camilla's dowry, she only had 88 chests, far inferior to mine. Entering the prince's manor, after the ceremony was completed, I returned to the bridal chamber to wait for Prince Edward. It was not until late at night that he leisurely arrived. His body carried the faint scent of cosmetic powder. He had surely just come from the side consort's court. Edward lifted my veil, his face showing a polite detachment, and spoke indifferently, apologizing that the princess consort had waited long, claiming the guests outside were truly difficult to deal with. But the noise outside had clearly dispersed long ago. I remained calm and natural, revealing no dissatisfaction. We drank the wedding wine together. After the ceremony, the prince said that Milla suffered from nightmares and could not be left alone at night, so he needed to visit her for a moment. Camilla was the side consort's name. I pretended to understand and spoke generously, saying that His Highness and my younger sister shared a deep affection, and if she was unwell, he should go visit her. A flash of surprise passed through Edward's eyes. When he spoke again, his tone was not as cold as before. He told me to rest early. I wore a gentle smile on my face and saw him out of the main court. Then, I ordered my maid to remove my jewelry and prepare for bed. The maid's face was full of anxiety. I knew what she was worried about. If I could not keep the prince on our wedding night, how would I live in the future? If this spread, the Gu family would become a joke to the entire capital. My gaze swept over the wedding wine cup, my lips curving slightly. I simply instructed the maid to serve subbering tea. Just now, when Prince Edward arrived, although there was the scent of powder on him, the smell of wine was stronger. I did not disdain to compete with Camilla, but on the wedding night, I still needed to act. Internally, even if I did not manage the household, I had to establish authority. Externally, I had to preserve the dignity of the Duke's estate. Not long after, Edward indeed returned, but his expression was unpleasant. He sat at the round table and drank the subbering tea, his tightly furrowed brows only then began to relax. He looked at me, coughing lightly, saying it was late and we had to enter the palace tomorrow, so we should rest. After speaking, he lay down in his clothes. I consciously used the quilt to create a barrier between us like a wide river, lying on the inner side. Others did not know why he was like this, but I knew very well. I had anticipated that on the wedding night, he would stay at Camilla's court, so I had put a drug in the wedding wine that rendered a man powerless. When Prince Edward prepared to consummate the marriage, he discovered he could not perform. A man's dignity prevented him from telling Camilla that he was impotent. But on the wedding night, Camilla would certainly try every method. Edward could not bear it. The best choice was to return to the main court. As long as he returned to the main court, that was enough. I not only succeeded in keeping him, but also avoided physical intimacy with him, and even sowed the seeds of discord between him and Camilla, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Why would I not do it? The next day, I went to the palace to pay respects. Camilla, as a side consort, was not originally allowed to accompany us. However, because of her special status, being personally betrothed by the emperor, and added to that Prince's bias, she followed us into the palace. I respectfully bowed before Emperor Henry and presented the prepared gift, a purple, gold inkstone. It was a rare item that could only be crafted in the Northwest, engraved with the imperial dragon pattern, enhancing its preciousness. The emperor had always loved inkstones. This gift was clearly thoughtful, making him very pleased. He said I was truly a thoughtful and skillful child, and that it was Prince Edward's fortune to have a princess consort like me. He said he did not choose this marriage wrongly. I knelt to thank him. How could the rumors in the capital escape the emperor's eyes and ears? He was merely waiting for my reaction. Rain or dew, all are the monarch's grace. Since I was so obedient, Emperor Henry was naturally satisfied. In contrast, his attitude toward Camilla was lukewarm. The emperor intended to support Prince Edward and had high expectations for him. A woman like her could easily cause chaos in the prince's manor, which was not good for him. Leaving the hall of mental cultivation, we went to the Palace of Beautiful Writings to see the noble consort. Noble consort Margaret Lynn sat on the high seat. Her eyes filled with laughter as she looked at me with approval, saying that having a princess consort like me was Prince Edward's blessing. These words were too exaggerated. I listened with a smile but did not take them to heart. Prince Edward was, after all, a prince of noble status. If I agreed and climbed up, would I not become someone who did not know her place? I immediately said the mother consort was too kind, and that marrying into the prince's manor was my blessing. Noble consort Margaret nodded with satisfaction. Only then did she state her main purpose. She said that although I was the princess consort, Camilla managing the prince's manor was Emperor Henry's decree, and she could not disobey him. She told me that since the Duke's estate had raised me well, I should just relax and enjoy my blessings in the manor, and not let outsiders think she was harsh to a good daughter-in-law like me. As she spoke, the noble consort beckoned me closer. She put a jade bracelet of excellent quality on my wrist and ordered a maid to bring a tray containing 2 sets of exquisite, priceless jewelry. I smiled and accepted them, simply saying that side consort Camilla was good at housekeeping, so I could take the opportunity to be at leisure. Actually, I understood clearly in my heart, it was indeed the emperor's decree, but the root cause was Prince Edward begging for it. Noble consort Margaret's words sounded pleasant, but in reality, she was subtly warning me not to fight for management rights and cause trouble in the manor. I did not care to fight for this right. Others, including the noble consort, did not know. But by chance, a friend of my brother in the army had discovered that while Edward appeared obedient on the surface, he actually frequented brothels. The accounts in the manor were a mess, without any order. If I managed the household, I would be busy until I was dizzy. Over the years, this manor had saved very little silver. I might even have to use my dowry to fill the holes. I wanted to push this hot potato away as quickly as possible. Carrying the generous rewards from the emperor and the noble consort, I returned to the prince's manor. After the concubines finished paying their respects, I immediately ordered my maid to record all my dowry and the palace rewards, and put them into my private vault. I called for a dowry maid skilled in cooking to quickly arrange a small kitchen. My 4 personal maids each had a specialty, and were assigned clear tasks. The main court immediately became orderly. Today in the palace, I had asked noble consort Margaret for the special favor of managing my own main court. The internal affairs of the rest of the manor still belonged to Camilla, so it was not considered a violation of the imperial decree. Seeing that I did not mind Camilla managing the family affairs, the noble consort readily agreed. In the afternoon, just as everyone in the main court was resting, a maid reported that side consort Camilla had sent someone with a gift. The maid carried a pot of peonies blooming brilliantly and beautifully. She said her mistress, the side consort, said this flower was blooming most fully and suited my status, so she ordered it to be brought here. She said this was a pot of flowers Camilla had personally cared for, hoping the princess consort would like it. I looked at that pot of flowers. Although it was covered very cleverly, if one observed closely, the soil at the roots had a slightly darker color. I had heard before that some gardeners, wanting to sell flowers, disregarded the life of the plant and applied a powerful fertilizer, causing the flowers to bloom brilliantly in an instant. However, in no more than half a day, the roots would rot and the flowers would wither. The maid had walked majestically through each court hugging the flower pot. Everyone knew the most beautiful of flowers had been sent to the main court. If this pot of flowers died tomorrow, the entire manor would gossip. Outwardly, I accepted the flower pot, but I did not let the maid put it down. Instead, I gave her a generous reward and told her to take the flower pot to the front yard and place it in the same spot as the flower pots Emperor Henry had bestowed yesterday during the wedding ceremony. I also ordered my people to spread the word that this pot of flowers was personally cared for by side consort Camilla, and placing it with the flowers bestowed by the emperor would allow it to absorb more dragon ki, surely making it bloom even more brilliantly. The maid followed my orders. As soon as the flower pot was set down, I quietly sent someone to check. Indeed, the roots were already rotten. Hearing how I handled it, Camilla was so anxious that she caused a commotion in her court. She wanted to send someone to swap the flower pot. How could I let her have her way? I sent people to guard it, so she had no chance to act. Unexpectedly, she directly set fire to all the flowers. When the news reached the main court, I only laughed coldly. Camilla was truly reckless. But it was true. Compared to bearing the reputation of clashing with the emperor, the crime of incompetent household management was indeed much lighter. After all, I had already spread the word that she personally cared for that pot of flowers, yet under the nourishment of dragon ki, it lived only for a day. She could not bear this bad omen. On the second day after the wedding, a fire broke out in the prince's manor. When Emperor Henry found out, he was furious. He immediately summoned Prince Edward and Camilla to the palace and scolded them severely. I sent a message to the palace asking for leniency for the two of them. The emperor felt even more that I had been wronged. On the second day after the wedding, the fresh flowers used in the ceremony turned to ashes. He rewarded me with many more items, then drove Prince Edward and Camilla out of the palace. Upon hearing this news, I was leaning on the Arahat couch, leisurely reading a book. Today, after returning from the palace, Prince Edward received orders from the emperor to come to the main court to comfort me. I ordered my maid to serve dragon well tea cakes and a pot of premium snow-top tea. The cakes were moderately sweet and not greasy, and the tea left a lingering fragrance. Edward, who had been frowning, gradually relaxed his expression. I simply advised him to visit Camilla often. She had just been scolded by the emperor and needed care the most right now. The prince revealed a look of satisfaction. He said he had heard I was arrogant, but he did not expect me to understand the big picture so well. Indeed, I was worthy of being raised by the duke's estate. He said this matter had caused me to suffer a disadvantage, and his imperial father told him to compensate me, so he asked if I had any wishes. I thought for a moment, and then asked him for the jade peony tree in his private vault. After all, the peony was the token of love between Prince Edward and Camilla. Moreover, I had heard that this jade peony was originally promised by the prince to Camilla. If he did not agree, then so be it. But if he agreed, There would surely be a good show to watch. Prince Edward frowned and hesitated for a moment, but finally agreed. After speaking, he prepared to stand up and leave. But before doing so, he discovered cake crumbs stuck to his clothes, soiling his robe. I immediately took out a brocade robe I had prepared. Conveniently, I suggested the prince change his clothes. This robe had been fumigated with the incense Edward liked best. He nodded, changed his clothes, and only then went to Camilla's place. Not long after, Camilla threw a tantrum with him. After all, she came from the palace and had weathered storms, but she had only just come of age, and matters of the heart are the hardest to control. She cared about the prince, but Edward not only gave the jade peony to me but also changed his clothes at my main court. That robe, besides his favorite scent, also carried a faint, sweet fragrance that was very hard to detect. Camilla had just been scolded and needed the prince's comfort, but who would have thought he would favor me repeatedly like this? How could she feel at ease? I boredly turned a page in the storybook in my hand. In this prince's manor, my greatest strength was that I did not love Edward. Only by not loving could I stand firm without any weakness. Camilla was in charge of housekeeping. When I returned to my maiden home 3 days after the wedding, she had to personally prepare the gifts for me. She was certainly gritting her teeth in anger. Actually, I had already prepared my own gifts, but if I could make Camilla annoyed, why would I not be happy? Because of the emperor's order, the prince attached special importance to my visit home. Camilla became even more uncomfortable. After I returned, she pushed the concubines in the manor to oppose me. She cut their food rations and daily sent delicacies to the main court, under the pretext that as the princess consort, I must be prioritized in everything. That day, when the concubines came to pay respects, their eyes looked at me with both disdain and mockery. They all put on an act of obediently listening to Camilla. Now it was time to let them know whose side was the right choice. In just 3 to 5 days, the concubines could not bear it. Everyone was so hungry their legs trembled. Their rations were already meager, barely enough to get by. Many wanted to act against me. But my main court had long been strictly guarded like a fortress. They naturally had no opportunity to strike. The rumors about me amounted to no more than a few casual sentences, nothing significant. Among them, concubine Lily was the smartest. She had originally planned to arrange an accidental meeting with the prince, to secretly complain and accuse me. Unexpectedly, before she could carry out her intention, she fainted from starvation. I secretly sent someone to deliver food to concubine Lily, while expressing that I was also helpless. After all, the management rights were in Camilla's hands. I wanted to help them but had no way. After leaving, I secretly had a maid tell concubine Lily that to survive in the prince's manor, relying on anyone else was useless. The most important thing was still to rely on Prince Edward. Concubine Lily immediately understood. With my secret assistance, she soon regained the prince's favor. Concubine Lily was skilled at playing the moon lute. I gifted her a lost musical score. This novelty was enough to make Edward fond of her for a time. Camilla was driven to madness with anger. She was busy dealing with the messy debts in the prince's manor, while Edward was happy with the beauties. Initially, she intended to let concubine Lily and the others oppose me, but she did not expect that I would send concubine Lily to the prince's side. Camilla loved Edward, so she naturally only thought of using the concubines to harm me. But in the backyard, favor is the source of all struggles between wives and concubines. 2 days ago, Camilla had a conflict with the prince. Now seeing this, she was even more furious. However, she could not vent her anger on him, so she could only vent on concubine Lily. Camilla made things difficult for concubine Lily day and night. She forced her to copy Buddhist scriptures in her presence. But even without concubine Lily, there were still concubines Jade, Rose, and Willow. I supported them one by one, forcing Camilla to exhaust herself dealing with them. Among them, concubine Rose was the most difficult to handle. After a confrontation with Camilla, she was punished by being made to kneel for 6 hours. Concubine Rose fainted right on the spot. Coincidentally, Edward witnessed the entire scene. Although he favored Camilla, he was already displeased deep down. Seeing this, he scolded her even more severely. Overcome with grief, Camilla fainted. When the imperial physician arrived to check her pulse, he discovered she was already 2 months pregnant. Learning that Camilla was with child, Edward was delirious with joy. The two immediately reconciled, and everything in the manor gradually returned to how it was before. Although Camilla could not serve him in bed, the prince still stayed by her side every night. Camilla became even more smug. Not only did she torment the concubines both openly and secretly, but she also sent someone to deliver a jade pendant to me. My personal maid was livid. Anyone could see that Camilla was mocking me. I had been married into the prince's manor for so long yet remained a maiden, while she was already pregnant. Regardless of whether it was a boy or a girl, it would be the prince's eldest child. Even if I gave birth later, my child would be the legitimate heir, but not the firstborn. I told my maid to remain calm. That evening, I invited Edward to the main court and treated him to a bowl of tea. Sure enough, it wasn't long before Camilla's people came to invite him away. The next day, the prince overslept. Even the servants beside him failed to keep track of time. When he hurriedly went to the early court session, he was fiercely reprimanded by Emperor Henry. By noon, using the excuse that Camilla needed to rest to protect the fetus, the emperor stripped her of her household management rights and handed full control of all matters in the prince's manor, big and small, over to me. Accompanying this news was the command token brought to the main court. I ordered my maid to accept it, the corners of my mouth lifting in a barely perceptible curve. Taking over management now was truly the best timing. The manor's account books had been clearly organized, and the financial holes had been filled. The concubines had just been disciplined and were behaving themselves. Moreover, Camilla's time in power was short, so not everyone in the manor was her close confidant. It was very convenient to replace them with my own people. The work Camilla did for me was truly like a perfect wedding dress. It felt incredibly comfortable to put on. I had long known that Camilla liked incense. Yesterday, when Prince Edward came to the main court, I added a special ingredient to the incense. If smelled alone, there was no issue. But if combined with the incense in Camilla's court, it would cause drowsiness and make one lethargic. Emperor Henry already disliked Camilla. Now that Edward was late for court because of her, how could the emperor tolerate it? However, considering she was carrying royal blood, the emperor only stripped her of her management rights. I stroked the command token in my hand, thinking about the next plan. I gradually took firm control of the entire prince's manor, placing my trusted aides in key positions. I could easily grasp every movement in Camilla's court. I discovered that her pregnancy showed signs of abnormality. She secretly invited a doctor from outside the manor. Only 2 months into the pregnancy, she had already started taking medicine to secure the fetus. I frowned, having a bad premonition in my heart. In the struggles of the backyard, I never wanted to drag an innocent child into it. I never thought of harming the baby in Camilla's womb. But one cannot be without guard against others. I instructed everyone in the main court to be extremely cautious and not to have any contact or disputes with people from Camilla's court before she gave birth. The main court had to maintain a clear distance from them. Except for the managers coming to report on the accounts, I did not leave the main court, living my life in peace. That day, noble consort Margaret summoned me to the palace. I left the manor in the morning and did not return until dusk. Unexpectedly, as soon as I returned, I heard the news that Camilla had miscarried. When I arrived at Camilla's court, I saw the doctor kneeling on the ground, trembling. Tragic wailing echoed from the room. Prince Edward's face was as black as ink. He roared at me, "You wench, why do you not kneel?" He threw a teacup beside him at me. If I hadn't dodged quickly, I fear the teacup would have smashed my head open. I was shaken but coldly asked what I had done to make the prince so furious that he would humiliate me this way. Edward threw a crumpled set of clothes at me. He gritted his teeth and said, "Venomous woman, these are the clothes you gave this prince before. The doctor said they are soaked in a large amount of musk. This prince wore these clothes daily, by Milla's side, causing her miscarriage. Do you still dare to pretend you don't know?" Prince Edward's face, illuminated by the candlelight, was dark and indistinct, carrying a ferocity like a demon. I calmly said, "These clothes have passed through so much time and so many hands, good and bad people intermingled. On what basis do you say I did it? If your highness has evidence, I naturally will not deny it. But now, if you slander me with empty words, then I must go to see imperial father and mother consort to let them judge for me." After speaking, I immediately sent a maid into the palace to invite the imperial physician. Hearing this, the suspicion in Edward's eyes faded by 2 parts. I held evidence that Camilla had secretly sought a doctor outside the manor for medicine. If I didn't make a big deal out of this, even if the prince knew I was wrong, he would easily let it go due to the situation of Camilla losing her child. But I could not swallow this anger. The news quickly reached the palace. Along with the imperial physician came a trusted nanny from the noble consort's side. The imperial physician was a loyal official to the emperor and would certainly not favor anyone. Camilla did not expect I would directly invite an imperial physician and refused to let him check her pulse. I laughed coldly. Or does side consort Camilla have a guilty conscience? With both the prince and the palace nanny present, Camilla was in a dilemma and could only reluctantly let the imperial physician check her pulse. I saw the gray look of despair on her face. After checking the pulse, the imperial physician honestly stated that side consort Camilla miscarried because she had taken medicine that induced the loss of the fetus. It had nothing to do with the incense on the clothes. He also said that side consort Camilla's body had been damaged by severe cold in the past, making it very difficult to conceive, and even if she did, it was hard to keep. Now that she had miscarried and damaged her body again, she could no longer conceive in the future. On the bed, Camilla's face was as gray as ash. Edward looked at her with a complicated expression, a mixture of anger, heartache, and guilt. Camilla was nominally the noble consort's niece, so the noble consort would naturally try to protect her. Seeing the situation was bad, the nanny spoke up to mediate, saying the side consort had left the root of illness from saving the prince before. Perhaps she was just momentarily confused to do such a foolish thing. Hearing this, Edward's expression softened slightly, his eyes showing even more guilt. He said nothing, evidently tacitly agreeing with the nanny's words. I remained silent, but the nanny turned to me and said, "Princess consort, side consort Camilla was also just momentarily confused." I laughed coldly and immediately interrupted her, momentarily confused. I fear that is not the case. Saying that, I ordered my people to bring out the evidence of Camilla secretly finding a doctor outside the manor to prescribe medicine. The expressions of both people stiffened. On the bed, Camilla had already fainted. Prince Edward, who had been silent from the beginning, finally spoke up in annoyance. "For such a small matter, why must you be so calculating? Milla just lost her child, must you force her like this?" I laughed coldly in my heart. If I hadn't produced evidence to prove my innocence, would they have spared me? Would they have easily let it go? No matter what, they wanted me to suffer. If I didn't fight back now, wouldn't I be seen as a soft persimmon easy to crush? I flung my sleeves and spoke clearly and loudly. Side consort Camilla framed the legitimate wife. Does your highness still want to cover for her? May I ask your highness, if I could not prove my innocence today, would you have spared me? Before the matter was investigated, your highness used harsh words to condemn me. Now that witnesses and material evidence are complete, you say I shouldn't calculate. I will definitely report this to Imperial Father and pursue it to the end. Otherwise, won't the entire capital think Gu family is easy to bully? I turned to look at the nanny. Or is it that the noble consort pities her niece and insists that I bear this injustice? My retort was sharp, not yielding an inch. Hearing this, Prince Edward clenched his fists tightly, then released them. Even the nanny beside him fell silent, daring not to speak further. Previously, I didn't fuss because the emperor had issued a decree. As a subject of the Gu family, I could only obey. That made people think I was easy to bully, that anyone could step on my head, but this matter could not stand. Edward is a prince, naturally, he aims for a higher position. He still needs help from the Gu family. I coldly harumphed and walked out of Camilla's court. Framing the legitimate wife is a serious crime. By law, she should be beaten to death. However, Emperor Henry, considering Camilla had just miscarried, only punished her with 50 strokes of the cane, confined her to her court, and forced her to copy Buddhist scriptures to atone for the lost child. For Camilla, it was as if the sky had collapsed. Because of this, Prince Edward was cold to me for 2 whole months. But so what? I managed the internal affairs of the manor and didn't need to serve a man. My maiden family was powerful, so no one in the prince's manor dared to look down on me. These 2 months, I lived incredibly comfortably. Today, Edward suddenly came to the main court. It turned out Emperor Henry had assigned him the task of inspecting salt and iron. Previously, this work was always handled by my father. The prince had no experience, so he still needed assistance from my father. He was forced to come to the main court. I maintained a calm attitude, neither inviting nor sending him off. He could come if he pleased. The prince had not sat for even a quarter of an hour before Camilla sent someone to invite him. Recently, having lost her child and being punished, Camilla relied even more on Edward. But this time, he did not leave immediately but stayed to have lunch with me. In the afternoon, when he went to Camilla's court, she cried, and made a noisy scene. I took the opportunity to add fuel to the fire, ordering someone to bring a bowl of fish soup. I instructed the maid to say that when having lunch at the main court, the prince praised this fish soup as delicious. Since the side consort was punished, as the princess consort, I would not hold grudges and only hoped the side consort would recover her health soon, so the prince would not have to worry. Unexpectedly, Camilla directly chased my people out. Edward currently needed the Gu family's help, so naturally, he leaned towards me and scolded Camilla a few times. Who would have thought she would completely lose control, arguing with him and even chasing him out of her court? No matter how much the prince doted on Camilla, he was a dignified prince, he had never suffered such humiliation. He harumphed coldly, flung his sleeves, and left. After the quarrel, Edward revealed his true nature and intended to go out to drink. But thinking of his official duties the next day, he only poured himself a few cups in the study. As the princess consort, I should have advised him, so I sent someone to bring sobering soup to the study for him. I secretly let this news reach Camilla's ears. Sure enough, she became even more furious, to the point of ordering all the osmanthus trees that the prince had planted for her to be chopped down, turning the entire court into a desolate mess. When Edward found out, the anger he had been suppressing erupted, and he drank until he was dead drunk. The next day, during the inspection, he fell off his horse. Emperor Henry learned of this and exploded with rage. The son he had placed his hopes on had delayed official business time and again for a woman. He could no longer endure it and immediately struck Camilla's name from the royal Jade genealogy, demoting her from side consort to a lowly mistress. When this news reached the prince's manor, Camilla fainted on the spot. Edward was also punished with confinement in the manor for 3 months. Although Camilla was demoted, the prince still couldn't bear it and went to visit her. Unexpectedly, she feigned illness and refused to see him. Edward was thoroughly angered and turned to find concubine Lily. Concubine Lily had been tormented by Camilla and was full of resentment. Taking advantage of her fall from grace, concubine Lily secretly slandered her in front of the prince. But Edward did not completely detest Camilla, he was just troubled by the conflict between them. Concubine Lily, unaware of the situation, poked at his anger at the wrong time. She was scolded terribly, grounded, and forced to copy the admonitions for women. Finally, Edward came to the main court. As usual, I ordered people to serve pastries and tea. After eating, the prince sighed. "Victoria, your place is still the most comfortable. I don't know since when this backyard became so noisy and annoying. Everyone wants to fight and snatch from this prince, only you do not fight or snatch." Hearing him speak, I only laughed coldly in silence. I did not fight or snatch simply because he had nothing worth fighting for. Why would I compete for a useless man like him? Sending him off, a feeling of disgust rose in my heart. I immediately ordered the maid to take the cushion he had sat on and burn it to drive away the bad luck. During the confinement, Edward was idle with nothing to do, so he indulged in favoring the maids in the manor. This behavior was truly despicable. One night, he sneaked out of the manor. Not long after, someone brought back a famous courtesan from Yangzhou disguised as a maid to serve him. When this news reached the main court, the corners of my lips curled up slightly. The prince was truly becoming more and more depraved. After the confinement ended, Camilla fell seriously ill and could not get up. Edward immediately changed his attitude, returning to his appearance of deep affection and righteousness, devoting himself to caring for her. But the imperial physicians were all helpless. Just then, a wandering Taoist priest appeared in the manor. He said Camilla's illness was caused by excessive grief leading to the loss of a soul. Only the fresh blood of a noblewoman born in a yang year, and at a yang hour could serve as a medicine primer, to be used continuously for 49 days to cure her. Sitting to the side listening to the Taoist, I laughed coldly in my heart. The only thing missing was him pointing directly at me. A single glance was enough to know this was Camilla's trick, but Edward believed it to be true. I firmly refused to give blood. The prince furiously shouted, "You are the princess consort, you should care about the concubines in the manor. It is just taking a little of your fresh blood, yet you refuse. You are truly too selfish. How can you act so muddied regarding a human life?" At this moment, I looked at Edward, hiding the disgust in my heart. Imperial father once said that our body, hair, and skin are all received from our parents. How can I harm myself for a Taoist priest of unknown origin? That is truly absurd. If your highness insists on doing this, then let us go before imperial father to distinguish black from white. Edward knew logic was not on his side and dared not confront me, so he confined me to the main court. This actually suited my wishes. Closing the door to enjoy a peaceful life, I was even happier. My people investigated and found that Camilla was indeed feigning illness. If she liked being sick so much, I would help her become truly sick. Not many days later, Camilla contracted a chronic headache, severe enough that she banged her head against the bed frame until blood flowed, yet the pain did not subside. This condition lasted for 3 days, making her wish for death. I secretly sent someone to reveal to her close maid that there was a medicine that could alleviate headaches. The next day, Camilla began using mineral powder. Her headache indeed improved. Hearing this news, I leisurely enjoyed a plate of fresh fruit served by my maid. As the end of the year approached, the prince had no choice but to lift my confinement. The prince's manor also gradually became lively. At the New Year's Eve banquet in the palace, Edward and I attended together. Camilla, although demoted to a mistress, still attended under the title of the noble consort's niece. Unexpectedly, in the middle of the banquet, Camilla suddenly went mad. She knocked over a dish in a young palace maid's hands, flipped the table in front of her, and laughed loudly in the middle of the great hall like a lunatic. Emperor Henry was furious. The entire hall knelt down. I also bowed my head, hiding the faint smile at the corner of my mouth. Before the banquet, I had someone sprinkle a small amount of mineral powder on Camilla's cloak. The hall was heated with red charcoal, and the high temperature caused the drug's effects to manifest even more powerfully. Everything was within my calculations. When Emperor Henry learned that Camilla was using mineral powder, he flew into a thunderous rage and ordered her to be beaten to death on the spot. He also ordered a search of the entire prince's manor to ensure Edward was not involved with this harmful substance. Outside the main court, palace guards were searching everywhere. I leisurely enjoyed my peace. The emperor was worried now, but it was already too late. The prince had long been addicted to this thing. In his moment of crisis, Edward came to me asking what to do. In his eyes, he and I were husband and wife, a single entity, so naturally, I would think for him unconditionally. I calmly replied, "Recently, there are reports of danger at the border. Imperial father is anxiously looking for someone to go to the enemy country for negotiations. I have heard that the Northwest has an antidote." After hearing this, Edward secretly investigated and verified my words were true. He immediately petitioned the emperor, asking to be sent as an envoy to the enemy country. Initially, the emperor still blamed him for Camilla's affair, but this action made him feel extremely comforted. When the court bestowed heavy rewards on the prince's manor and the noble consort, I was like a fish in water. During the days the prince was not at the manor, I managed everything in an orderly fashion. Everyone in the capital praised me endlessly. I became even more humble and dignified, never boasting of my merits, only saying this was my duty. Every few days, I wrote letters to Edward, pretending to miss him and hoping for my husband's return. But 3 months later, what I waited for was the news of Prince Edward's death. When the bad news arrived, I fainted on the spot. When I woke up, I hugged the prince's coffin and cried until my intestines felt severed. Perhaps I was too heartbroken. The eyes of those around me showed pity. The person who brought Edward's coffin back was none other than my brother, General William Gu. My brother said that after arriving at the border, the prince was dedicated to his duties, but the enemy country played a dirty trick, using peace talks to lure him. When the assassination failed, Edward was gravely wounded and later did not survive. My brother also said he had crushed the enemy army and taken the head of the assassin, while also asking the emperor for punishment. The emperor seemed to shed tears but immediately adjusted himself, only praising my brother for a job well done. I knelt before the prince's coffin for 7 days, stopping only when I fainted. Emperor Henry felt both pity and guilt, bestowing rich rewards on the prince's manor and declaring that in 2 years, I would be allowed to adopt a child to inherit the title of the prince's manor. I suppressed my grief and kowtowed to thank the emperor. After the funeral, all responsibilities of the prince's manor fell on my shoulders. Everyone said I had a bitter fate. When I first married, I was oppressed by a side consort, and just when life stabilized, Prince Edward passed away. Now, only I remained, lonely and solitary, looking after a vast prince's manor. But when the doors closed, I put away all appearance of grief. I comfortably reclined on the small couch, allowing several fresh-faced, handsome youths to massage my arms and legs. What did they know? My happy days were only just beginning. The Northwest is a distant land, beyond the emperor's reach, and my brother is the great general guarding the border. When Edward arrived there and his addiction flared up, he no longer resembled a human. My brother only needed to arrange things a little to achieve the desired result. As for the truth, did it not rely solely on my brother's words? No one would ever know. From now on, the splendor and wealth of this prince's manor are mine alone to enjoy. Is there anything to be unhappy about? This story illustrates that the loudest voice in the room is rarely the strongest. Victoria's victory was not won through aggression, but through silence and strategic patience. She understood that fighting for the heart of an unworthy man was a losing battle. Instead, she fought for her own dignity and future. By allowing her enemies to be consumed by their own chaotic emotions, she won without ever raising a hand. Ultimately, it teaches us that composure is a weapon. When you remove emotion from the equation and prioritize your own value, you become untouchable. True success is not being chosen, but choosing yourself. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.